Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to our next series of tutorial videos where we go in depth through every feature or most of the features that this exciting new arranger from Ketron, otherwise known as the event, has to offer. So there's word out there that the event is a huge monster, but the question is, what exactly are the features? And so these next set of videos are going to be targeted at the features of the event in this tutorial. So without much ado, let's get started. We would like to thank all of you, first of all, for your support and for your patience as we roll out this new product. Now, who exactly is the event for? First and foremost, the event is for those of you who are playing live. In other words, our gigging musicians on stage who want live sound. They want to feel and have the presence of a live band backing them up. And that's what this arranger does. One of the world's first live arrangers, because your drums, your bass, your guitars, your flute, your strings, and your accompaniment, the entire accompaniment section of this machine is actually live. And this actually builds on where the SD9 left off. So even though she might seem abandoned in the corner, she also has her own pluses as well, which we shall be discussing down the road. But not to turn away from the event, which is the main talk of the social media buzz right now. What exactly is Sheila? Let's find out. First of all, we're going to turn this beautiful instrument on. And how do we do that? We reach out over here, we plug in the power adapter, and we turn on the power button by pushing it down. You get that confirmation click, and event begins to boot up. Now, while the event is booting up, let us look at the surface and talk about some of the features and the layout of this beautiful, beautiful keyboard. Of course, not forgetting first and foremost the large touch screen, high definition touch screen display that you have right there. What a beauty, what a beauty. Anyway, nobody's going to be asking you how your screen looks or what the specifications of the screen are. Everyone's going to want to know, how does your keyboard sound? So while the event turns on, let's talk about the layout of this beautiful keyboard. Over to the top left hand section over here of the event, you will notice that you have, first of all, you have three major sections on this keyboard, right? So on the left side, you have general controls that will give you access to your recording functionality, access your player for your multimedia, be able to control your bass either in automatic mode or in real time as well, or in arranger mode, sorry. Have access to general MIDI parameters and protocol. You have your transposer button right there on the top left. And most and foremost, you have your volume sliders here for your arranger. Now, these sliders do have dual purposes, right? But predominantly, they're used to control whatever there are that is labeled below right there. So, for example, I can control my drums, my bass, my chord. And this is true for the style and also for the MIDI parts when you're playing a MIDI file on the arranger as well. So, yes, it is a multimedia player and is capable of doing some nice things, which we shall talk about in this series of our tutorials. But back to the event, So let's get back on board. You can see it's all turned on and ready to go. On the bottom section here, you have your arranger control. So when you hit your chord, you go out there, you can hit your, arranger A, B, C, D, being able to control the variations of the style in real time, okay? And real quick, the center here, of course, nothing is as eye-catching or eye-dropping as that large color screen. Wow. So over here, everything for the most part, most functionalities are driven by the touch screen on the Ketron event. Simply touch and carry out whatever action you want to be able to carry out. So for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to go in there and I'm going to try and make this screen a little bit dimmer so that it can show better on the display. There we go. Oh, by the way, we also have some nice, beautiful LEDs here on the side as well. These are all lit up. And you can change the color. I can go to blue. I can select violet if I want, or green. Okay, so this is very, very interesting. Again, set it as you wish, based on your environment. I'm going to leave mine right now on this cayenne right there, so it stands out better in my video presentation. Okay, so get out of there, turn off menu, press exit, and get back to my default screen, which is this guy. Now let's focus on the screen there. What is this information on the screen in general talking about? So in the top left-hand corner, you know, where it says country ballot, you see that everything has its own little color, so it stands out better than on our previous products. That is where you have all your style information, okay? So in this case, you have ballot, which is the category that the current style is coming from, and the name of the style is there in capital letters, country ballot. And right next to that, it gives you the volume of the style, right? So that's the volume of the style. So, which means that when you reach out here and you control the volume here, you can actually see that on the screen, the volume of the style does change in that little box over there, okay? So, again, these are all your stuff for your style. The tempo, the BPM, the timing are all in that box. Now you move over to the right in the center. The most interesting box, of course, is your sound box. That first one in the top center over there, if I zoom out, is where you have your first voice. So this right here ties to your first voice over there, okay? So this is the main voice that you're operating with. You touch that, and of course, the screen will give you access to what other voices that reside in that particular bank. So let's go to the screen real quick. You look at the top right there again. Tells you grand piano. The top left-hand corner in that section says piano. That's the category it came from. And you see next to that it says 1 of 6. That's the page. So you have many pages of piano in the grand piano section. Okay, and of course it tells you that it's voice 1. It gives you the volume as well. And on the bottom it shows you the split point of the keyboard. All right. And over to the right, you see the third box in the top right-hand corner, which is voice 2. Very similar to voice 1. And of course, with similar information, apart from the fact that you now have the octave, which displays in the bottom, and the transposition of the entire keyboard as well. All right. So if I zoom out of there back, so that's pretty much the screen, the top part of the screen that you're seeing now. Let's go back in there again and talk about the other section. So if you see the parts in red, so whenever you touch, make a selection on the screen, okay? So for example, if I touch this over here, you see it turns red, right? And then the screen responds in kind as well, right? So when I touch that, it allows me to have access to my style selection, okay? So I can either use the physical buttons over here to access the different styles, right? Like for example, rock or dance, or I can have access on the screen, and then this will display the various styles. All I have to do is turn the knob, look for the style I'm looking for, and touch it, okay? The same is also true for the voices, or similar. You touch the grand piano, then of course the side of the screen shows you the different pianos. Let's go back into that screen again so you can see what I'm talking about. So you now look at the different sounds in that piano category, all right? If you want to change the category, let's say you wanted to look for voices in the pad, all right? You would just reach out over here, and these are your voices too. So these physical buttons here act for your style selection and for your voice selection based on what you touch on the screen. So if I reach out to pad, right now it changes, and I now have access to my first page of pads, and I can turn the wheel and get to page 2, page 3. If I want to make a selection, I simply touch that. And that's the same for making a selection for voice number 2 as well, okay? Now, moving down on the left side, you have the player button. So if you want to be able to access like your MP3, MIDI files and WAV, you simply touch the player button and get in there. Or you can just touch either one of the 2 player buttons here as well, okay? The center of the screen tells you what you are in right now. So for an example, the last thing we just touched was the voice. So that gives me the current selection of the voice. If I touch the style and I get back out of there, it will also show me whatever I last used, for example. And over to the right, which is one of the most powerful tools on this keyboard, registration. This is like where you keep your snapshots or settings of the keyboard. You set up the keyboard for a particular song and you save it in registrations. To access that, simply touch on the registration and it will take you to there where you have your current registrations. Or you can touch the physical button on the panel itself. So the good thing about this keyboard is that even those who are visually impaired can also use it to some extent, because there's a lot of duplication and repetition, just to give you a fast way or a quicker way to be able to access things on the keyboard through tactical buttons on the panel and also through the touch screen. And you can customize this in various ways such that it meets up with your demands. So let's get back here again and see what we're talking about on the screen. Below that, over here, you have your view meters, of course, your volumes, and this is based on the volumes of the various parts. On the left side, it's the arranger, your drums, your bass, your chords, all right? On the right side, your voice 1, voice 2, drawbar, and your mic input. You can plug a mic to the back of this keyboard and sing your heart out, right? And below that, you do have access to the bass, okay? You have drawbar, organs, bass over there when you touch either one of those. And on the bottom, you have your controls to be able to control predominantly your style part. Now, the good thing about this part on the bottom is you can create your own with the user tab right there. So if I go to user tab, I can actually have access to even more control functionality. And if I touch user, I can actually program, okay, these different buttons here. All right, so that is really much about the screen. Below the screen, again, on this section here, you have access to your drum mixer, which allows you to go in and mix your drums, especially your MIDI drums, in real time. Okay, so if I do this, for an example, if I have a style that's running or if I have something that's playing and I want to be able to quickly just tap on that and move it up and down, I can do that, you know, as you can see on the screen over there. That's beautiful. And by the way, you also have access to be able to connect an external monitor, which I'm doing right now. It could also be an external touch screen monitor, where you can actually have this device run and operate the same exact way as the device on the keyboard itself. All right, so let's go back to the keyboard now. On the bottom, we have controls for your arranger part, key start, key stop, your start and stop, and your tempo right there. And again, you know, on the right here, we have the data part of it, being able to access and control the data with the data wheel, getting into different functions. And here we have your media, being able to access the different devices that are connected. As you can see, you have your internal drive on this unit, and you also have a USB drive here. And in this case, the USB is plugged into the side of the event. If you look over here, where you have your USB on right there, you got 2 USB ports to plug in external storage devices. You also have a USB host right there that plugs to your computer, where you can either use that for MIDI information back and forth, or predominantly what it's used for is to transfer data between the drive and the memory of this machine and your computer. Next to that, you also have the HDMI port, which we have right now plugged into this particular monitor, and you have access to your SD card right there on the side as well. So you can see that you have a lot of things that are going on the event, and that's why it's called the event. It's one of the most eventful keyboards you're going to hear about in 2023. But again, let's not blow our own whistle. Let's move on. Back to our panel. So the top right-hand section, of course, is more dedicated to voicing, okay? But then again, you have other things in there, changing of octaves, again, access to the registrations, which we did discuss before, all right? Aftertouch, Portamento, and DSP. Voice 1 and Voice 2, again, you can layer voices on this. Voice 1 can be made up of 3 instruments. Voice 2 can also be made up of 3 instruments. So when you have them both on together, you're talking about 6 instruments right there, all right? And use a voice whenever you create a voice, whenever you edit or modify a voice on the machine, or you load an external voice from the outside, it gets stored in the user voice location, and that will be displayed on the screen, as you can see right here, if I can zoom in correctly like that. Right now it's empty, but as we go ahead with our tutorials, we shall be adding more stuff here, and you should see exactly how this does work out for you. Okay, so get back to the top of this keyboard, and over here we have our sliders again for the other parts: Voice 1, Voice 2, drawbar. And mind you, you can actually have 3, so you can have 3 voices running simultaneously. Okay, Voice 1, Voice 2, and your drawbar as well. There we have control to the microphone, to the voice drone, and this is for a crossfade. If the machine is off, you hit that button, it brings up the volume gradually until it gets to the maximum point set by the volume. If the machine is playing and you press your fade button, it'll fade down back to 0, okay? And on the far right corner here, which is very exciting indeed, and we're happy about this because now for the first time, we actually have live control to the effects within the event. And you have various effects being able to dedicate effects to just the audio parts of the event, which would be your drums, bass, guitar, and what have you on the left side, and also have dedicated effects for the MIDI and the GM voices that are found inside the unit itself. Okay. And of course, on the bottom here, you have the dual buttons that are used for your voice and your style selection, right? So based on your selection on the screen, if I touch the top left-hand corner, I can now select the various styles over here. Or if I touch either one of the two boxes here, I have access to select the various voice banks or the various groups. And when I touch that, then I can make my selection on the screen itself. So that's really in a nutshell what we have in the top panel. The event comes in only 76 notes, 76 keys for the time being. And oh, we didn't discuss the back. Let's move over to the back real quick. So in the back of the event, you do have many connections back there. Of course, we're going to put up some more images that show you that. But we do have, what is exciting behind is the left and right audio outputs, but we have two stereo auxiliary outputs on the back, which means that we can use those to be able to send out different parts of the keyboard through different channels for external processing or for beefing up the sound, and that's a very powerful thing, because now it means that you can actually mix certain elements of this keyboard on an external device or an external mixer. That's why it's very professional indeed. You also have connections there in the back to your foot switches, your volume pedals, sustain pedals, your output that also goes for the MIDI. You got 4 MIDI connections out there, okay? We actually have 2 sound cards in this machine, access for GM voices and for the arranger as well. And we should talk about that when we talk about the MIDI section as well. So that was it. I just wanted to give you a brief rundown as to what we do have in the event. And that was a rundown as to what it's is physically visual to the machine. Subscribe to our channel so that you can get notifications for our next forthcoming videos. In our next video, we're going to talk about the first topic, which would be voices on the event. We'll talk about how to access the voices, how to use them, how to layer, split those voices, and also how to even load in external voices or sampled voices. All to do with voices, coming right up in our next video. Ciao.